Newell and myself, the boys are back in town for the second time talking politics, the three of us actually, to talk about this fascinating night last night of the election. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me and welcome in this fine Sunday morning.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting.
Why don't we start with you, Robert? Because you are sort of the qualified person to talk about this. Me and Damian are more just kind of, we think we know a thing or two. Obviously a historic night last night, with the first time we have a majority government in MMP. Just tell us your thoughts.
Well, I think like many other people, I think it's a stunning result, or extraordinary night. I personally thought, like I think many people, and all the polling evidence seemed to suggest it, that Jacinda Ardern's Labour-led Jacinda Ardern, leader of the Labour Party, would actually probably get about 45%, maybe 46% of the vote. And I think one of the reasons that I think there's two things here. First of all, I think Jacinda Ardern's performance as Prime Minister struck a bipartisan chord amongst many people. What do I mean by that? I think that many national support, I have two people, and I think I'm probably, not untypical. I have two friends who are national supporters, diehard national supporters, and they voted for the first time in their lives for a Labour leader. And when I asked them why they did this, they said, well, actually, it was all down to the Prime Minister's handling of COVID-19, a really deadly disease. And I think I think many people made their decision on less ideological terms than what they perceived to be competence to handle a very dangerous problem. And Jacinda's combination of empathy plus the ability to take decisive action, which is, let's be quite clear, that's a winning combination in politics. If you can both feel someone's pain but take steps to ameliorate the pain, I think that's a big step forward. But I think the second thing was, particularly amongst young people and middle-aged people, I think, there is a sense the world is in a bit of a mess at the moment. We're a bit of a crossroads. And although foreign policy didn't loom in the election hardly at all, I think that many people see Jacinda as representative of a generation that really has to deal with the sort of problems which have been neglected for a long time. Inequality, climate change, things like this. So I think these things came together to produce an extraordinary vote. And of course, the third factor may be just simply that Labour won so handsomely because, National have had really severe problems going back for 18 months or so. So, I think it's very harsh to blame it all on Judith Collins. I was a bit taken back by Simon Bridges' comments last night that he seemed to imply it all fell apart as soon as he left the leadership. I think that's, almost a simplification, put it mildly.
Yeah, it was interesting watching last night. I watched the TV1 coverage, which means I had to watch the appalling Kelvin Davis speech afterwards because it was only shown on TV3. But it was interesting to watch two or three of the MPs and leaders coming out, and you could hear the jabs. And I agree. When Simon Bridges was talking, I was like, "Oh, there's a bit of a pointed comment there, and there might not be the night for that." What about you, Damo? It's a big morning. You are our experienced politician who has been in politics, local body, but you sort of know the cut and thrust of what a election night, both winning and not winning, is all about. What are your reflections on last night?
Oh, an absolutely amazing result. But I think, as well as Jacinda did, and the Labour Party, I think it was very much an own goal from the National Party. I mean, COVID-19 was a massive thing for any government to deal with, and some have done it a lot better than others. But I think National had a real opportunity, in my mind, to say, okay, Labour have got us through the health crisis. We're the money people. We're gonna sort out the economy, and we're gonna get you back. To Judith Collins, I mean, the first time that her and Jerry Brownlee walked, there was that big march down the corridor as they came out of, the leadership battle. And the first thing Judith said was, we're going to smash the other guys. I mean, talk about read the room. We're in the middle of the world's, worst pandemic in 100 years. I mean, we don't need to be smashed. We need a hug. And I think that was very much the difference right from the get-go, was that tone that was set. It's not all Judith Collins' fault. I mean, she had a hospital pass, but they threw it to the wrong person. I mean, what National needed to do was come to the centre, and what she did was she consolidated the hardcore fans on the right. She got that 28%, and that's all that she was going to get. And then there was just so many own goals on the way. Going back to Jamie Lee Ross, to Balloon, to Michael Woodhouse with his invisible homeless guy, and I mean then you had Jerry Brownlee's conspiracy. And then, latterly, when the wheels totally fell off, I think, Judith Collins talking about how Tasmania and Labor hates the farmers and the fat shaming. And my personal favourite was when she said, the wealth tax was definitely coming, and if Jacinda went out of town for the weekend and left James Shaw in charge, they were going to sneak it in by stealth. I mean, it was just a campaign that it was rudderless, and I couldn't believe, knowing the money behind the National Party and some of the big brains that they did have, that someone didn't just do a Control-Alt-Delete somewhere along the line and save it. Because, I mean, I don't think they were ever going to win, but they didn't need to be as badly decimated as they were last night.
I agree with you, Robert. I was thinking, 46, 47%. I thought they might come in on sort of 58 or 59 seats. But something that I kind of twigged with me towards the end of this election cycle, I was thinking, how does a party who gets 44% of the vote end up with 49% of the seats? I couldn't quite figure it out. And then, of course, I realised it's all the wasted votes. And actually, there was between 8 and 9% wasted this time around. For people who are watching or listening, by wasted, we mean people who put a party vote for a party that didn't make it. They didn't get to the 5%. So actually, if that 9% wasted vote, quote unquote wasted vote, was still accurate, actually 46% probably still would have got them to a majority, because it becomes 46% out of the 92 or 91 eligible percent that are in there. So actually, they were, even though, like in hindsight's 2020, I don't feel like a bit of a fool saying it was obvious. It wasn't. There probably was a better chance they were going to get a majority than I was giving them credit for, and it is indeed what has happened. But 64 seats is unbelievable. That's well past anyone's expectations.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, just to add to Damian's point, which I think is a really important one, about the political culture, I think in the sense, the Labour leadership read the mood of the country better than the national leadership. And I think Damian hit the nail right on the head when he said that when the new leadership was formed by Judith Collins and Jerry Brownlee, I think that sort of, they just didn't seem to really absorb the impact, the sobering impact that COVID-19 has had on New Zealand and the world. I mean, most Kiwis are very conscious that we have come out of this relatively unscathed. And I think many people, particularly with friends and colleagues overseas, the messages they get, boy, has your country handled this well compared with ours. We've had clarity. We've had a government that listens to scientific expertise and healthcare professionals, and we've learned from other countries. Jacinda Ardern has peppered her speeches with references to how South Korea, Vietnam, and other countries have handled this problem. So, in a sense, we've been learning, and that isn't been the experience in many countries, some of which are traditional friends of this country, where there's been utter confusion and chaos, and now fear. And I think, I maybe I don't know, it's still early days and we're reading the tea leaves a little bit. I'd be interested to know what both you and Damian think on this. But my sense is that in the last 8 months or so, since we've been experiencing COVID-19, I think many people in our society, irrespective of their status in that society, have become acutely conscious of how we depend so much on each other. The bus drivers, the nurses, all the unsung heroes of our society, which we all critically depend on. I think this crisis has extended our awareness of this in a way which I think, in a sense, plays into the narrative that Jacinda Ardern has been articulating, like the team of 5 million, we've got to hang together, let's do this together. And I think the reason Damian mentioned when Judith appeared on the scene, it may have energized some of the section of her caucus. And I think actually she did a very competent job in very difficult situations. I mean, I think that party's been in free fall for a long time. And you can't stop the rot overnight. And Simon Bridges indicated what was the problem last night when he started bickering or started complaining in the way that he did. It showed whoever's leading that party has a major challenge on their hand. They're going to have to change. One key word that Judith Collins mentioned in her concession speech was discipline, the lack of it. And I thought that Mr. Bridges' behaviour last night confirmed that.
And I think you're right that it's not just the Judith situation, because when you say she came down the corridor, let's smash him. I mean, that was similar, not reading the room, as Dama just said, to that infamous Facebook post that Simon Bridges put up about COVID, which inevitably was a thing that got the country to turn against him. So yeah, I don't think this is all about Judith, and I have to say most of her concession speech was fairly good, although talking about the digs, there was still the digs about, she didn't say it quite as bluntly as this, but we would have been better to handle the economic crisis, and we're going to be in a worse place in 5 years because of the current climate. So yeah, I it wasn't all Judith. I did get a bit sick of watching TVNZ and hearing Nikki Kay continually talking about the short runway, because you do have to play the cards you dealt. But what I'm hearing from the two of you guys, and maybe with that included, is it was the perfect storm that led to 64 seats. What do you think, Damo?
I think it just I don't think Judith's speech. I think Judith and Simon and Nikki Kay all together. I mean, they all painted the same picture. It was all disciplined. It was divided, and I didn't think Judith was. I didn't think she was that. She was pretty graceless, I thought. She said she wanted to pay tribute to Jacinda Ardern, then went straight into, how badly they've done economically. I also think, going back to Robert's point, regarding Jacinda and the messaging, you get one shot at this. And that is the one thing I think we did better than a lot of other countries, because we did have a lot of luck. Let's be fair. We're on the other side of the world. We're a tiny little island nation. We just shut the border and everything's cool. But what Jacinda did very well to take the people with her was it was clear messaging. There was her and Ashley every day, and it was very, very clear. You start changing your messaging, you get it wrong, as we've seen in other countries, you lose the people. And I think the clearest example of that is in Victoria. The first time round in Australia, they had a relatively good lockdown. Everyone was singing from the same hymn book, and everyone was on that team. But then, when things started to go pear-shaped, the second lockdown in any country is never quite the same. Whereas, because Jacinda was so very, very clear with her message and took the team with her, I mean, we would have followed her over the hill. When the whistle went, we would have gone with her. And I think that was the thing that was we did better than any other countries, because we did have a lot of luck. But you've got to use your luck, and I think she did that very, very well. But yeah, listening to Nikki Kay last night was just painful. I think, for God's sake, bless her for going there, because that was a very, very. I mean, every time that they panned to her, she was just getting further and further down the seat. And, it was awful to watch. The biggest thing for me is I can't see how National come back from here. I mean, they will. I know that. But they're going to lose a lot of stock. I mean, a lot of the old heads are already gone. I think they lost 19. They're going to lose more, over the next few days. I mean, Jerry Brownlee's talking about, possibly throwing in the towel, not lasting the 3 years. Nick Smith's gone. They've got some good young people coming through, but there's a big gap here, I think.
I also think that the idea of how Labor has handled COVID, and there is some criticism there, but one of the things that is evidence that how this country has responded in mass to sort of health over, let's say, profits. Even health over economy. I mean, I don't want to be naive. We all are aware how important economy is, but But if you've got to pick between let's err on the side of being safe and healthy or let's err on the side of, getting our GDP back up, it feels like Labor has erred on the side of let's be safe and healthy. And one of the reasons I think is evidence that has been picked up with and run with by the government in general is the results of the party vote in all the electorates. TVNZ last night said they had hundreds of thousands of people voting in their compass looking at, what trends were in each electorate. They said the most conservative, right-leaning, whichever you want to say, electorate in the country was Rangitikei in the South Island. Their party vote in that area, 15,793 to Labour, 11,210 to National. I actually struggled to find, I had a bit of a look this morning, I actually struggled to find a single electorate where National got more votes than Labour in the party vote. Now, I did find one by chance because I saw an item on CNN talking about Jacinda Ardern's hometown of Morrinsville and how they're unlikely to get any, votes for Labour in this conservative part of New Zealand. So I thought I'd go and have a look. They're now in the Waikato region, and I think National beat Labour currently, before specials, by about 40 votes. But I'd be really interested. I haven't had time to do the numbers yet. I'm sure it'll come out how many actual electorates National got more party votes than Labour. I'm struggling, other than that one by chance, which they got 40 more, literally double digits. I'm struggling to find any others where they did.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Labour's approach to the relationship between health and the economy was more attuned to the public's reaction than National. National did for a while a bit of a rerun of Bill Clinton's old slogan in different circumstances. It's the economy stupid. But you see, people are very aware as a whole. I mean, most people have access to the internet and they know exactly what's happened to those countries which did not lock down quickly. They had the worst of both worlds. They had large loss of life and many COVID infection, and the economy was also devastated as well. And I think the argument the government has made that if you look after the health of people as rigorously as you can, you've got your best place to economically recover. And, we might argue about the balance, but I think on balance, on reflection, with the benefit of hindsight, probably Labour did that, got that balance slightly better from a public perception point of view than the National Party. For example, when Judith first came in, she started saying that she stepped back from it, but she made some, I thought, unguarded comments about border security, which is, fair game. I mean, these are things that opposition should draw attention to. But at one stage, she went too far. She suggested the whole response had been bungled, or words to that effect. And, I think at that point, in a situation where many people were alarmed by this deadly virus, I think some people saw that the National Party was veering towards scoring partisan points when we were all at risk. And I think that's dangerous for politicians, because I think it was Chesterton once said, if you pick up any stick to beat your opponent, it quickly turns into a boomerang. And I think that's probably a little bit of that happened last night.
The thing that I thought was weird was National didn't need to do that. They didn't need to necessarily oppose what was going on. They just needed to offer a better economic solution for the long term. And, when you had the choice between health or wealth, which essentially what it was, and I think, Robert, you bang on the money, it turned out there wasn't a choice. It's like whether or not you have the pain now or you have worse pain later. And Helen Clark said, I think she summed it up perfectly. She said, economies recover, dead people don't. And it was that clear. I just think National just needed a better plan, and because of the disarray that they had in their ranks, they just couldn't do it.
I'm interested as well, Damian. You were saying how National comes back. We have experience of looking to a country in America after Obama and saying, the GOP has lost the female vote, they've lost the minority vote, they've lost the youth vote. All they've got left now is white men, and they're going to be out of office for the next, 7 cycles. The very next cycle, they get back in. So I struggle to think, that they can't or won't. What I'd rather do is kind of look at if Labor can basically do whatever they want, and I thought it was quite nice to hear Jacinda, and I haven't got the quote with me, but talking about basically moving the agenda forward quickly, a rapid movement forward at the podium last night. That was quite an aggressive position, but fair call. You've been given the mandate to basically do whatever you want, but I suggest that they've only got 3 years, because the chances of getting, just historically speaking under MMP, chances of them getting a majority next time around are probably quite slim. May happen, don't know, can't read the tea leaves, but if they looked at it like that, Jacinda was quite moderate from the podium last night, quite centrist, and that's a great position to take. But I'm interested to see now what they do. Do they put forward and get through those things? You think about the wealth tax, you think about the names don't get out of my head, the tax you put on houses when you sell them. You think about, these sorts of things. No matter what the referendum comes out, they could pass those bills if they wanted to on cannabis and euthanasia, because they have a mandate in numbers. Maybe that would be an immoral or a bit of the country wouldn't be so stoked if they ignored it, if it was a no and they made it a yes. But they can do what they want. So the question is, do they go hard and go left because they think we've got 3 years to make these changes? And for example, the tax ones, we need tax in the country at the moment because of COVID. Or do we, as Jacinda said at the podium last night, do we... when I hear someone say, I am the Prime Minister for every New Zealander, I agree with that because you've won, but that message is being sent to those who don't support you, saying, don't be worried, you're part of our team as well. Damian, why don't you kick us off with this one and tell us your thoughts about 3 years of going hard or finding that moderate in-between stance and looking for maybe they're looking for a long reign of another 6 or 9 years from now.
Well, you did right, because I think the way they act is obviously, it will dictate whether they get another term or not. And, there's so many factors in that, in the sense that one whoopsie with COVID, for example, and they could be really back on the ropes. We gave you our vote, and look what you've done. Look what you did. You let us down. The problem I think they had the political capital, and I've got to say they had a lot of political capital, I think, in this term that they didn't use for various different reasons, I think, in fairness, they had to put on. But they've got all this political capital, but they've got no money. They're going to want to implement a lot of their policy, but a lot of their money has been promised, down the road. So I'm hoping like hell they actually get some stuff done. That's my goal. The complaint I have about this, the current government that we do have, is the fact that they had all this political capital, and I don't think they used it. They could have done a wealth tax. They could have done capital gains. They didn't need to totally rule those out. And I think that was a missed opportunity for them, because now they can still do it. But they've got to go back on a very, very clear promise that was, underlined in red with exclamation points till the cows come home. So, and yeah, we've seen politicians do that before, let's be honest. But I think yes, they have the political capital. No, they don't have the money. And it's how the hell they balance that.
Robert?
Yeah, I agree much with what Damian has said. The only thing is, I think on the political capital thing about not using it when she had it during the last 3 years, I think I'd slightly differ in terms of emphasis there. I think Jacinda Ardern is a cautious politician, and she was very concerned to keep the coalition together. And I think Mr. Peters' New Zealand First was a considerable constraint. She's kind of hinted at that in the comments since the big victory, that they'll be less constrained. I think actually one of the reasons that so many national voters have defected to the Labour Party is because she was quite moderate. She didn't go for the capital gains tax and the wealth tax. And she's made an absolute assurance about both, apparently. So I don't think we can expect too much progress. One of the issues that intrigues me going forward is whether we're going to see a coalition between Labour and the Greens. They don't need to do that, but that would be reassurance, I suppose, that this is an attempt to rule in the interest of the country at a very difficult time. But I do think we're going to see a little bit more ambition from this Jacinda-led government. She's in terms of reducing inequality. But I think the other thing is we have to watch out for is a measured opening to the world. I don't think, I think Damian is absolutely dead right. Our economy, shortage of money and with limited maneuver, we've got to get the economy. This is a country, by the way. One thing that disappointed me about the whole election campaign, and of course I put this in print in the spin-off, there was such an internal discussion, and I know it's all bread and butter issues, but this country is critically dependent on its international environment. Something like nearly 30%, or about 28% to be precise, of our GDP is exported in terms of goods and services, and largely agricultural goods. So we do need the external environment. The question is, how can we really open up again in a careful, measured way? So that's a big challenge we face. My money will be that we'll do it carefully and cautiously, and we'll do it with those countries which we have confidence in terms of their handling of COVID-19. The other big issue facing this government is whether Jacinda Ardern is going to use her enhanced international position to begin to act like a minor power rather than a small state on the international stage. There's a number of things that we have to move on. One, of course, is climate change, which I think the Prime Minister is very committed to. But the other thing, and it's the elephant in the room as far as I'm concerned, is the erosion of the rules-based international order on which this country depends. I mean, let's be quite clear, our national interests are being eroded by the activities of the Trump administration and the Brexit government. We're negotiating a free trade agreement at the moment with Britain, which has just broken international law with the EU. So these are questions that we have to face. What can we do to strengthen a rules-based environment which the majority of countries in the world favour? And it may sound rather dry and academic, but it's not, because if you take an institution like the WTO, which is being eroded by the Trump administration, we've got into 7 trade disputes since 1995. We've won all 7. Why? Because the outcome was decided on the basis of rules, not raw power. That's how we can win a trade dispute against bigger countries like the United States, EU, and yes, Australia. That's how we got apples into Australia. So these issues matter to us, and it's important, I think, that we begin to have some influence internationally.
Well, because I'm a cheapskate and the version of Zoom that I've got cuts out after 40 minutes when you do multiples, I've just had the 10-minute warning. So let's just wrap up. And one of the things I wanted to share with everyone, if they're not aware already, you were talking about the international capital that Jacinda has. I think that's really important at the moment as to what we've got. And I think it couldn't be much more accurately shown, and how often does this happen, than the Dalai Lama this morning sticking out a tweet and a message to Jacinda. I congratulate Jacinda Ardern on her party's resounding victory in New Zealand general election. I admire the courage, wisdom and leadership, as well as the calm, compassion and respect for others she has shown in these challenging times. I don't know if too many leaders of countries, especially in the Western world, neoliberal at time worlds, are getting those kinds of messages from the Dalai Lama. I think that shows the international standing she's got amongst any. But I think, Damo, I'd like to get your thoughts around the Greens super quick, because it seems that it would make sense to have them in government, and I think I've been saying that for the whole year if it was to be a majority, primarily in case if you need them next time, or if you want to push something through that's a bit further left than your base is. However, there was something that was brought up yesterday, and someone saying that maybe it would be better for the Greens to not be in government, to be in opposition, and then they can really push and crash their own agenda, knowing that if they were in government, they've really got no power anyway because Labour doesn't need them. Yours, sir.
Yeah. First and foremost, congratulations to Chloe. That was just such an amazing result, and I think that is an absolute testimony to shoe leather. She just went out there and went berserk campaigning, and I hope she's got a week off now. Yes, everyone's forgotten about climate change, and obviously we've had other things on our plate, and COVID has taken most of the headlines, but I think there will be some sort of relationship. But I think from a Labour point of view, it would be a nice to have. From a Greens point of view, we see these small political parties just get absolutely chewed up by government every single time because they tend to toe the line when their supporters wouldn't have them do that. And we've just, the MMP system in New Zealand hasn't worked yet. I mean, we've had good results, but we need lots of little parties doing their things. We've still got, up until last night, we still had the hangover of these two major political parties. We need lots of little parties, and what happens is they just keep getting cannibalised. And that would be my concern from the Greens' point of view. I think there will be some sort of relationship, and I hope there is, because one, I think it sends a good message along the lines of hearing about the environment, which the Labour government definitely do. But yeah, as I say, from a Greens point of view, it's risky.
Risky to be in, you're saying?
I just think maybe they can make more noise and from the outside.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, because I even think if they are on the outside, that doesn't stop them from knocking on Jacinda's office, so to speak, and still trying to push something through. Mm. What do you think, Robert?
I'd be very surprised if there's not some sort of working relationship for two reasons. Firstly, this morning, the Greens were saying, the leadership was saying, that they're the first small party that's gone into coalition and emerged with an enhanced share of the vote. Mm. So, I know that they didn't have the same close relationship as New Zealand First did with the government, but they were still part of the, government, outside the executive, but part of the government. But the second thing is, I was very struck by a comment that Jacinda Ardern made, which caused controversy and, some pain for her within the Labour Party in defending James Shaw. She was asked in one of the debates whether James Shaw had done the right thing over the, the money being provided for a private school. You recall that controversy. And she said he did the right thing. You see, they have a close relationship that goes back many years. And I'd be very surprised if there's not, I don't know if it'll be a coalition, but I think the Greens and Labour see themselves as working partners going forward. Mm. They have a lot of overlap in terms of their agenda. And the Greens do have some really talented people in their ranks. And interestingly, another hint that was given out before the election was that Jacinda Ardern said we need to expand the talent base within the Labour Party. Well, it may not actually come from within the Labour Party, but I think she's aware that there's talented people. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. It'll be interesting to see in the next few days whether Jacinda decides Labour should go it alone. I personally think she'll probably veer towards some sort of working relationship with the Greens, but we'll see. All
right. And I guess the other thing to make sure we acknowledge this morning is the other big election that happened this week. The radio ratings came out, and Damian, congratulations, breakfast host of The Breeze here in Dunedin. The Breeze, the #1 radio station in Dunedin. So congratulations on that little election as well, sir. Well done.
Thank you very much. It's taken a long time to get there.
I think we're done, guys. I think that's an interesting wrap-up, and all my little notes have ticked off. If there's anything you want to leave with, we've still got about 3 minutes before my Zoom cuts off at the 40-minute mark. Feel free to share.
I think it's going to be interesting, obviously, what the National Party are going to do. Hopefully they do nothing for a while and get their ducks in a row. But, I think Simon Bridges committed murder almost on nationwide TV last night. I wouldn't put a comeback past him, stranger things have happened. I think what they go, where they go, they've got to come to the centre. They've just got to come to the centre. They've got the hard right sorted, although they lost a lot of that to ACT. And I think, David Seymour just, I oppose just about every one of his policies, but he is a great politician. And I think testimony to how well he communicated his message. He got a lot of the National Party. They didn't have anywhere else to go, I know, but I still think he did very, very well, and he should be very proud of his result. I also think it's going to be interesting to see how many he brings in and who they are. That's going to be a motley crew, lest we forget the baby passport incident last time. What National do and who their leader will be, that's going to be the big interesting thing for me.
Speaking of committing murder on live television, just popped up on my phone as a headline from Judith Collins. I feel very concerned for my country. says Judith Collins after a Labour landslide victory. I always think it's funny when the politicians say that the voters have got it wrong. That's always an interesting position to take, isn't it? You guys
Especially
are
at
wrong.
those numbers.
Yeah. Robert, 60 seconds, anything?
I mean, it's a variation on the old political message, isn't it? Or a stance that the policy was perfect, but they couldn't get their message across. And it's a variation of that. I'm really sad that she said that, because I think that probably shows the lack of reflection. I mean, if they're going to recover, they need to reflect and look at the situation honestly and diagnose it.
And change.
And change. All right, gentlemen. Damian Newell, broadcaster, politician. I wanted to ask you as well, Damo, what happens the day after you lose a spot? But I think we should go rather than cut out. Maybe we can find out. And Professor Robert Patman, Robert, your piece was out in the spin-off on Thursday, I think. So if people want to check up on that, they can have a read of that. Thanks for joining me, boys. And I'm sure we'll do it before that. But if not, we'll see you in 3 years.
Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.